Hello and welcome to Heart Containers, a daily Nintendo podcast where every Monday through Friday we discuss the latest news and various other fun Nintendo topics. I'm your host, Reggie Fils-Aime, and this is the episode for Friday, February 22nd, also known as 1 month of Heart Containers. We actually made it to 4 weeks of this new show, and I'm really proud of that. I feel like over time, it's really started to find its groove, and it's turning into something that is worth listening to, which is great. I'm happy about that. I'm happy about all the progress we've made, and I'm looking forward to what the next month will look like for Heart Containers. Surely we will continue to figure out what this podcast is all about, how we can improve it, how we can make it better. And for the 1 month episode, we have a lot to talk about because yesterday was a pretty eventful day in the world of Nintendo. If you don't know, Reggie Fils-Aime, the current president and COO of Nintendo of America, has announced that he is retiring later this year. It's a bittersweet moment for the company, for the industry as a whole, but we will be talking about that in today's show, as well as more Xbox news, except this time not Scalebound related. Instead, we actually have some concrete information about the partnership between Nintendo and Xbox. Now, it is still a rumor, but this rumor has been passed by multiple sources and been talked about in multiple outlets about Xbox Game Pass specifically coming to Nintendo Switch. It's no longer a nebulous idea of what the Xbox and Nintendo partnership could look like. No, this is finally, you're going to be able to play Xbox games on the Switch. At least that's what the current rumors are saying. So we're going to talk about that as well. And as always, after we go through all the major headlines from the days prior, the last bit of the show is going to be dedicated to answering the question of the day. Yesterday, I asked you guys to tell me what you expect from a next-gen home console Pokemon experience. What qualities, what mechanics does Pokemon 2019 need to instill in order to have its revolutionary, Breath of the Wild moment? And remember that you can easily participate in this question of the day by heading over to heartcontainerspodcast.com/question, and then you can be represented in a future episode. So we're going to wrap up the show by discussing what the future of Pokemon should look like in all of our opinions. But before that, let's start with the Daily Nintendo Report.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality. And it's called the Wii U Gamepad.
Hi, Nintendo fans. Reggie here. By now, you may have heard the news. Yep, I'm retiring. I wanted to reach out directly to you, the Nintendo community, because there's one thing I really want to say. Thank you.
No point in saving this news until later. Let's start with the big one. The current president and COO of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aime, will be retiring later this year. In an official press release that was sent out yesterday afternoon, Nintendo announced Reggie's intention to retire, as well as some overall choice highlights worth remembering throughout his career. Now, Reggie joined the Nintendo team during the tail end of the GameCube generation more than 15 years ago, and has since held the presidential position for nearly 13 years. During that time, he played an instrumental role in ushering that new era for Nintendo's overall business strategy, when the company shifted their focus to broadening the gaming demographic with the Wii and the DS. I feel like that is one of the most important things that Reggie was able to accomplish during his tenure, coming in at the end of the GameCube generation, a generation that Nintendo really struggled in, and turning Nintendo around. Of course, he didn't do it by himself, but being the lead for Nintendo's greatest, most influential region, the North American region, and helping Nintendo shed the persona of its past and instead become this company that appeals to every marketing demographic, that appeals to young and old, to men and women, to every age group, every interest type with the Wii, which became a runaway success, and the DS as well. That cannot be understated, that Reggie was the figurehead for Nintendo of America during that time period. Reggie had also been and continues to be, up until the point where he actually retires, the mouthpiece for Nintendo that most of us have been confronted with. Whenever there's a presentation, an interview, an announcement, who do we see? It's Reggie. It's always Reggie. Ever since 2004, when he came onto the scene and did the presentation for E3 that year, we've known him on the Western side of things, on the English side of things, as the guy who tells us what's going on in the world of Nintendo. He immediately formed a connection with us and other Nintendo fans across the globe when he made his first significant public appearance, like I just said, at E3 in 2004. He came onto the E3 stage and stated, quote, "My name is Reggie, I'm about kicking ass, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games." He then proceeded to go through one of the most iconic and memorable E3 presentations in Nintendo's history. That point in time was when it became solidified. And since then, there are all of these moments that you can pick out that Reggie just came out of on stage or whatever it was that he was talking on, and just used his charisma, his humor to make us laugh, to make us smile, and make us realize that although Nintendo is a big, scary corporation, it's made of real people. And Reggie was one of those people. Whether it's him saying, I'm about, kicking ass, taking names, making games, or saying that his body was ready. We all really connected with that. And since then, he has consistently been a touchstone for the community, an aspect of his role that he focused very heavily on in his personal address to fans that the official Nintendo of America Twitter posted sometime after the press release. It was like a 2-minute video. And he said, quote, from the first time I saw the nickname Regginator, I realized that Nintendo fans share a unique sense of community, a bond that goes beyond just the love of video games, end quote. That entire 2-minute video is heartwarming. And if you care at all about Reggie's tenure, Reggie's history throughout the years, I definitely encourage you to watch that. It's fun to go back in time and see all those moments that I was just referring to see how they played out his Regginator identity over the years, the comics, the skits, the key time periods where Reggie came out to us and told us what the heck was going on in the world of Nintendo. It's very sweet. I really appreciated that video. Reggie later assured us Nintendo fans that this is not the end for him. No, this is just a beginning in his overall life. Or a new beginning, I should say. Saying, quote, as I look forward to departing in both good health and good humor, this is not game over for me, but instead leveling up to more time with my wife, family, and friends, end quote. And I'm sure after hearing that, my wife hopes that one day I too level up to spend more time with her, as well as my dogs. But I will do so the moment I spend a 15-year career run at Nintendo. Then I promise you I will level up to spend more time with my wife, my dogs, and my friends. So the actual date that this will be occurring on will be on April 15th. That's the date where Reggie steps down, and the person that will be stepping up to fill that gap is none other than Doug Bowser, Nintendo of America's current Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. Doug Bowser will take his place. Now, besides having a rad name, which I'm not going to go into that much, because I feel like it's been beaten to death ever since this announcement happened. Yes, his last name is Bowser. Yes, that technically means Bowser is taking over Nintendo of America. It's awesome. It's awesome in the silliest of ways, but hopefully we get desensitized to that over time, because I feel like that joke is going to get really old. But knowing Nintendo, they'll probably play into that joke. They drive into the skid like that, because that's exactly what Reggie did whenever jokes were made about him. They were never really about him, were they? They were with him. When he said his body was ready, he continued to bring that up over time, and it just became an identity for him. And we all kind of share that moment with Reggie now. I mean, heck, it's part of the daily Nintendo Report intro. That's how iconic that moment is. So maybe we'll have more of that with Doug Bowser in his name. Now, who is Doug Bowser? His career highlights include leading the current marketing efforts for the generation that we're in, the Nintendo Switch, which, in my opinion, has some of the best Nintendo marketing to date. Ever since the Nintendo Switch was announced in that October video saying this is the first look at what we're doing next, it was clear that Nintendo had a very good idea of how to market this next generation. It was vastly different than what they were doing with the Wii U. And Doug Bowser played a key role in that. So I'm I'm excited about that. He also worked at Electronic Arts and Procter & Gamble before joining Nintendo almost 4 years ago. When talking about the new opportunity, Bowser stated that, quote, "It has been my great fortune to work with and be mentored by Reggie for 4 years at Nintendo of America. And rest assured, we will continue to build on his work to evolve and expand our brand, furthering Nintendo's global mission of creating smiles. There are millions more of those to come." End quote. Overall, this news, like I said earlier, is very bittersweet. I mean, I love Reggie. I think Reggie was a fantastic president for Nintendo of America for the reasons I listed earlier. He truly shined as a figure piece, as a community leader for the industry in a way that a lot of other companies kind of fail to do so. I mean, when you think of PlayStation as an example, they don't really have that figurehead in the same way. They don't really have that person that really represents the corporation that makes the company feel more human that Nintendo had with Reggie. And we're going to be losing that. We're going to be starting over to an extent with Doug Bowser. And who knows how forward Doug is going to be, or Bowser is going to be, when compared to Reggie. We kind of already had to go through something like this when Satoru Iwata unfortunately passed away and passed the torch to Tatsumi Kimishima, and now with Furukawa, with the overall CEO and president of Nintendo as a whole, to see how forward and how public facing the latest and greatest of the presidents will be. So far, I feel like Iwata was way more public facing than Furukawa. So we're going to see what happens with Reggie and his next successor, Doug Bowser, to see if Bowser will play the same exact role as Reggie, or is he going to have his own flair, his own take. I hope that no matter what he does, they don't kind of relinquish that public communication aspect, because I think that's something that Reggie did so well, and that's kind of why it's a little sad that Reggie is stepping down, because we don't know what's going to happen. It's also sad because Reggie was good at his job. I already mentioned earlier how he did a great job at helping pivot Nintendo into the Wii and DS era. But even when things got tough in 2014, 2015, when Nintendo was experiencing some of the worst financial operating numbers that they've ever received as a company since they went into the video game business, because how unfortunate the Wii U and 3DS were selling when compared to the previous generation, Reggie was there. Reggie was there to focus us on what was really important, what Nintendo did well, and those were the games. And we survived, right? We made it through the generation, and look where we are now with the Switch. I mean, I praised Bowser for his marketing efforts and leading the charge on making the Nintendo Switch, or helping the Nintendo Switch become what it is today. But again, he was being mentored by Reggie. So it's sad that we're missing a community, that we're losing a community leader, that we're losing someone who is no doubt so good at his job and has a charisma, a personality that's going to be unmatched no matter what. But at the same time, like, good for you, man. Good for you, Reggie. 15 years, and to end like this. How could you ask for a better finish for your career? To be at one of the best companies, I think, possibly to work for, bringing smiles to people's faces. That is a great motto for a company to go in. They've given him so many creative freedom to build a little community for himself, to become the Regginator, something that not all companies allow you to do, to kind of have a personal brand of yours, and to leave on such a high note. It's rare. It's rare to do that, to kind of take a step down, feeling like you fulfilled everything that you needed to fulfill, that you left a legacy behind, and that you probably will not be forgotten. You have a stamp on this company that's going to last forever. And we'll be talking about Reggie quotes and the things that Reggie has accomplished well into the future decades of Nintendo. That's significant. So congratulations, Reggie. You deserve the rest. That's what makes this such a fun, sweet moment of remembrance that you're retiring. I guess we're just going to have to look forward to see how Doug Bowser behaves as the new president and COO of Nintendo of America. All right, let's get into some juicy information. Finally, there's something to talk about, and that is that Microsoft is reportedly bringing Xbox Game Pass, xCloud, and some of their exclusively published titles to Nintendo Switch later this year. Now, this is according to a report by Direct Feed Games, but it's been sourced by multiple other outlets. You can go to almost any other media outlet right now and read about this, including Game Informer, with their very own Imran Khan, who we've talked about multiple times on the show. He wrote up a little piece about it saying that he also reached out, or Game Informer as a whole at least, reached out to their sources to confirm some of these things. And they did confirm, at least to the people that they talked to, that they also believe that Xbox Game Pass is something that's coming out later this year. Now let's unpack what this means, because there's a lot of different portions to this. First of all, I mentioned Xbox Game Pass. I mentioned xCloud. Those are things that maybe if you're listening to the show, you have no idea what they are, because we are a Nintendo show and those are Xbox, Microsoft style things. In fact, I didn't even really know the details of xCloud very well, so I had to refresh myself on that. No worries, I'll let you know what they are. Game Pass is like a Netflix subscription for the Xbox platform. It allows you to download over 100 Xbox 360, Xbox Live, and Xbox One titles onto your hard drive to play to your heart's content for just $10 a month. You pay $10 a month, you go onto Game Pass, you pick the games that you want, and you download them onto your hard drive. Now, they're available to play for 30 days offline before requiring an internet connection to make sure that you still have the subscription. So I'm talking about how they are available offline so much because when Game Pass, or if Game Pass, as the rumors suggest, is coming to Nintendo Switch, it actually will not be working that way. And we'll get to that in a second. So that's kind of what Game Pass is. It's this Netflix subscription for games. Nintendo doesn't do that as much. I mean, you see that a little bit with Nintendo Switch Online and their NES package, which I guess is the closest comparison to that. You can play the NES games offline as well. But again, those are only NES games. Xbox Game Pass is more than that. Sure, they have downloadable titles, but you can also play 360 titles, and the first-party Xbox One games are fully available on there. They usually release day and date with their retail releases on Game Pass, like Crackdown 3, which is a first-party Xbox exclusive that just came out. You can play that on Game Pass in its entirety right now. So it's more than just small projects. It's almost everything that Microsoft can release on Game Pass, they usually do. So what is xCloud? xCloud is a streaming network which is bound to unlock console quality gaming on any device. At least that's what they're projecting it as. That's what they want it to be. They mentioned it for the first time last year at E3 2018. Phil Spencer came on the stage and talked about what Project xCloud was. He asked the world, what if everyone in the world could play Halo? That was the question. And the idea is to give access to games to anyone who has a device to allow them to play whatever they want, wherever they want. They showed snippets of games like Halo, Cuphead, and Gears streaming on mobile devices as examples. And they basically stated that they don't want hardware to get in the way of playing the games. Yes, they have people who love their consoles, and consoles are still going to be the best way to play. But this is more about choice. What about the people who don't want a console? And also, what about the people who do want an Xbox console, but also want the choice to play in other situations when they're not at home, or just when they want a more convenient time to do so? They want to make gaming more accessible, and they're going to leverage Microsoft's Azure cloud services to solve a lot of the problems that streaming seems to have. So you take xCloud, you take Game Pass, you combine them together, and it starts to make sense how this all fits in the Nintendo Switch picture. Game Pass could not work on Nintendo Switch in its current form because it's all about downloading games. That means all the games that you would download have to be able to natively run on the Nintendo Switch if you were downloading them. So the compromise, or the assumption, which is not true right now, it would be a brand new thing, because xCloud, even though it was talked about last year, it's still waiting for its time to shine. I think the quote was, "When we have it just right, we are going to scale it up and deliver it to the world," end quote. So it hasn't actually delivered yet, but once it does deliver, the idea would be that you have access to all of the games on Xbox Game Pass. That means Crackdown 3, that means Rare Replay, yes, Banjo-Kazooie finally back on a Nintendo console. That means Xbox 360 backwards compatibility games like Mass Effect, Xbox Live Arcade games, all of them. You have all of them available on your Nintendo Switch, but they are being streamed. Unless any of those games have ever released on Nintendo Switch, or can run on Nintendo Switch. Like an example of that might be Minecraft. We already have Minecraft for Nintendo Switch, so I guess that's possible. Not for that one in particular, or other games like it. When you go to Game Pass, you might have the option to download that, but more often than not, you're going to be streaming. That's the idea of how this would work on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the rumor actually goes on to say a little bit more about that. It didn't only say that Xbox Game Pass and xCloud are making their way onto Nintendo Switch, but that Microsoft is interested in pushing more of their exclusive content to just publish them normally on the Switch, that more is coming. So recently we actually found out about Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice that was announced during the Direct to be coming on to Nintendo Switch, and I actually mentioned how strange that was, that this game being made by developer Ninja Theory, who is wholly owned by Microsoft now, would be coming to Nintendo Switch. It's not the first time a Microsoft-owned developer has released games on the Switch actively, even though they're owned by Microsoft, or I mean, after the fact, they're owned by Microsoft, still choosing to release games on the Switch. I just mentioned Minecraft as another example, but it still seemed a little weird. But now the dots are seeming to connect, and Direct Feed Games is reporting that Ori and the Blind Forest will be another example of this, that Microsoft is preparing to release Ori and the Blind Forest, which was that Metroidvania indie title that they showed off a few years ago. It got stellar reviews. I haven't played it. It looks great though. That's a game that should or could be making its way onto the Switch and be running on it natively. Now it's time to get into my favorite part of the show, the question of the day. Yesterday, I asked you guys to tell me what the next generation of Pokemon should look like. I referenced Breath of the Wild as kind of like a measuring point, because I believe Breath of the Wild was a revolutionary step forward for Zelda. It was going back to the drawing board, rethinking what Zelda could be, what it should be, and then reimagining what a 3D Zelda could look like on modern day consoles. What does that mean for Pokemon was the question I wanted you guys to answer. And I actually did get an answer. We're going to go over that response first. This is the quote that I got. Quote, very Breath of the Wild-esque. The game starts with a tutorial area of sorts, and after that you can get the gym badges in any order you want, with the game automatically changing the enemy Pokemon difficulty as you progress, end quote. And I gotta say, I could not agree more. This is exactly the type of thing that I also would expect from the next generation of Pokemon, because when I think about the core identity of Pokemon, to me, that means adventure. That means discovery. I mean, it's a game where you start in your mom's house and you're living with your mother, and she basically kicks you out of the house and says, go have an adventure. And you go and you have nothing. You don't even have a Pokemon. And from there, you kind of sprawl out into this environment. You meet all types of people, discover all types of magical creatures across the land, save the world in one way or another, become the best trainer of all time, catch them all, defeat the lead four, all of that stuff. It's about starting small and going on this grand adventure, like Tolkien or the Hobbit in that way. And I think what this responder said, what this answer said, is exactly how you could do that, by opening up the game a little bit. I think by taking gym badges and making you or letting you play them in any order you want is the exact type of thing that's going to create this feeling of adventure, this feeling of discovery. I imagine a world where, yeah, you can go and tackle the gyms in any order you want, with the Pokemon scaling and difficulty so that it makes sense that no matter what gym you go to, it's still going to be appropriate for your level. But then, if you don't want to do that, you can focus your time on finding new Pokemon. Maybe the game, and I would want this to be the case, the game starts out with all new Pokemon. So you don't have any familiar faces. It's all about running into new species, new Pokemon types, all of that stuff. So maybe you just want to play the game and discovering all of those Pokemon. Or maybe you want to beat the main story. I would love to see the idea that if you do make it open up, well, you probably can't tie the stories very, very closely to gym progression anymore. So instead, the main story can be tangential. It has its own benefits, its own ways to interact with it that are actually kind of running as on the side as a peripheral thing to the actual gyms. Or you can tackle the Elite Four, or you can hunt for legendaries. My point is the opportunity, the option to go out and do whatever it is that you feel like you should do is what's going to create the sense of adventure and discovery in the community again. I wholly believe that. When you go and play this next game, if they allow you to do stuff like that, if they open it up in that way, well, then you are going to be able to go do something. Your friend is going to be able to do something else, and you're going to be able to come together and share those experiences in a way that are in a way that's very reminiscent to the early days of Pokemon. When back then it was almost generated out of constraint. You know, we didn't have all the answers to what a Pokemon game could be like. It was a brand new experience, and we also were limited by technology at that time. So these secrets, these magical moments of discovery spread like wildfire. You would go to school and someone would say, hey, I went to Cinnabar Island and I caught Missing No. Or, hey, I discovered this rare candy duplicate cheat, or any of those things. Or, I know how to catch Mew. One of the things that I heard multiple times that drove me crazy, whether it was true or not, was that in the very beginning place where you start out in Pallet Town, the boulders that block off the grass from the right and left of Pallet Town are supposed to be filled with Charmanders and Bulbasaurs and Squirtles. And if you've ever figured out how to get to them, well, you'd be able to catch all of those to your heart's content. I wholly believed that when I was a kid, and I tried everything I possibly could to get there. And it was because in the early days, it seemed like everything was possible, that you were going on this personal magical adventure in discovery. And I feel like by opening the game in the way that was responded, in the way that was suggested, and some of the ways that I talked about will be the perfect way to do that. Because someone can go off on their own and say, I'm just going to hunt legendaries. And I'm going to go into this cave. I'm going to look for a legendary. I'm going to see what I'm going to find. And then they're going to have their own story to tell. Maybe they do find something really cool and you run into them in game or in person and you say, oh, what have you been up to? I actually got the 3rd badge. And they say, I found this legendary Pokemon that does this, and it was hidden there. And it just kind of sparks that love, that attention, that motivation, that magical discovery that I think is crucial to Pokemon, that has kind of waned over the years just a little bit. And I think opening up the game is the perfect way to do that. Now, the only other thing that I would say, besides just making it more open, besides adding the ability to go whatever way that you want to go and play the game whatever way that you want to play, I think something that Game Freak should definitely push are the multiplayer capabilities of the franchise. I want to see something that's close to kind of like a Journey multiplayer experience. Journey, that game by, is it That Game Company? Is that who makes it? It was a PS3 game that came out where the multiplayer mechanics for it kind of center around this idea that you would play and then other characters would just kind of populate. It's actually a common thing for some online MMOs and stuff like that, where the people around you kind of populate in, they kind of just push in whenever you're walking around. That's actually the type of thing that I want to see in the next Pokemon game, because again, Pokemon games are about all these people coming together and training at the same time, or at least in a realistic sense. When a new Pokemon game comes out in the real world, all of us at once join in and go on this adventure simultaneously, and we trade and we battle with each other, and it's a very real human interaction worthy experience. And I want to see that brought over to the game itself, so that there's interaction happening all the time in real life and in the game. And I think you can do that by having players kind of populate and kind of push in while you play. An example of that is that you reach a town, and as you go through that, you just see people walking around during their playthroughs. You can just see them going through, and then maybe you have some sort of interaction. Maybe you walk into a Poke Center, and then there's a guy who maybe has an exclamation point above his head. And if you interact with anyone who has an exclamation point above their head, you can engage in a trade or in a battle or something like that. Just be able to see the breadth of people around you, and maybe even communicate with them. If Nintendo isn't going to be too stingy on the parental controls on that, that would be something really wild. So to sum that all up, I totally agree. I think the next generation Pokemon game should open it up so that they can reinvigorate the sense of discovery, the sense of adventure that Pokemon, to me, has been a big part of that franchise all the way from the beginning. And I also think that they should focus a little bit more on the multiplayer experience. And that concludes today's question of the day, but it's now time to ask you Monday's question of the day, to let you guys know what we're going to be discussing in the very next show. Now that we got the bittersweet news of Reggie Fils-Aime's retirement, I'm curious to know what you guys think is your favorite Reggie moment. What sticks out to you when you look back at these past 13 years of the Regginator kicking ass and making games? Again, this is your reminder that you can easily participate in the question of the day, like someone did for this question of the day, by heading over to heartcontainerspodcast.com/question, and doing so will get your voice represented in that episode. And that's all I got for you today. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions, concerns, or any other reason you want to reach out to me, to contact me, do so. You can do that on the website, heartcontainerspodcast.com, or you can talk to me personally, where my Twitter handle is @RomFawaz. That's ROMEFAWAZ. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I hope to see you all again on Monday. This has been Heart Containers for Friday, though. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you real soon.